Last week, we were talking about the first main schism in Buddhism between the older Theravada form of Buddhism and modern Mahayana. We have a new person here today, Jessica. Jessica, are you familiar with the difference between Theravada and Mahayana Buddhism? Do you want to tell us what you know about it? If you can use the microphone, then people online can hear you. No, go ahead. All right, someone else. Why doesn't someone else explain what we talked about last week very briefly for Jessica? Cassandra, why don't you try? Describe the difference between Theravada and Mahayana Buddhism. You have to get the light to go on.
Okay, I hear it. The main idea that I got from it is Theravada Buddhism and to practice it, their goal was for themselves to reach enlightenment, to be in our heart, and basically they were not really connecting with the outside world or trying to help other people to do so. And then the transition to Mahayana is when monks would first. So a shift from having the venerables do it proceed through it themselves to help other people first reach enlightenment or the bodhisattva status first.
Does that sound like what you're familiar with, Jessica? One way of thinking about it is that in the earlier form of Buddhism, it's called Theravada Buddhism. It means the school of the elders. Spiritual progress was an individual pursuit. I think of it like doing sit-ups. Everybody has to do their own sit-ups. Nobody else can do your sit-ups for you. Each person does their own work. Whereas at Mahayana Buddhism, the struggle for enlightenment becomes a collective effort. It's almost like a team sport, but that in the team includes all sentient beings. So that in earlier Theravada Buddhism, the goal was to be an arhat, who was an individual who's overcome the self. In Mahayana Buddhism, that goal is replaced with the bodhisattva, who defers enlightenment in order to stay to help the team, so to speak. So it's an individual effort versus a collective effort. This took place between around 100 BC and the year 0, somewhere around in there. There were other big differences as well. In Theravada Buddhism, the word Buddha refers to historical Buddha exclusively, that one particular person. Suddenly in Mahayana Buddhism, you get hundreds of Buddhas all over the place. All these new Buddhas come up, which weren't a part of early Buddhism. You also get a bunch of new scriptures. The first round of scriptures were all lectures of the Buddha. They all start out, thus have I heard at one time, and they're located in a particular place in India at a particular time with an audience. And then with Mahayana Buddhism, you suddenly get new scriptures that are very different and very weird. And that's what we're going to be looking at today. One of the most important Mahayana scriptures, the Heart Sutra. The Heart Sutra is an example of what's called Prajnaparamita. How many of you have heard of Prajnaparamita? You're all nodding your head. Prajnaparamita, prajna means wisdom. It's usually in Buddhism, it means insight into emptiness. Paramita is a little more difficult. I don't speak Sanskrit. I'm taking all this on faith, but according to the people who read Sanskrit, it can mean a variety of things. The highest or perfect, complete, getting to the other shore, but it can also mean going beyond the other shore, depending on how you parse it. So Prajnaparamita could mean perfect wisdom. It's frequently translated as perfection of wisdom. It could mean the wisdom which has gone beyond, or it could mean that which has gone beyond wisdom. It's a rich term. So we're going to look at one example. There are many Prajnaparamita sutras. The earliest ones were a sort of medium length, the perfection of wisdom and 8,000 lines. And then they tended to get longer and longer and longer for a couple of 100 years. All the new Prajnaparamita sutras were longer and longer. And then suddenly it started getting shorter and shorter again. And at the end of that process, we get to the Heart Sutra, which is one of the shortest sutras of all. There is an even shorter one. In the Tibetan tradition, there's a sutra that condenses it all down to one letter. Does anyone know that one? Can you guess what the letter is? It's one. I don't read Sanskrit, but no, not quite. It's actually the letter A, which in Sanskrit, as in English, means not, like aflammable or apolitical. So they get it down to one letter. But anyway, we're going to look at a not quite that short, but another very short one, the Heart Sutra. And this is the translation from Master Xing Yun's book. So let's try to read through this together, and then I'll ask you some questions. Then I'll give you a little background and ask you some questions and put you into groups to talk about it. All right? All right, so read along with me if you can. Avalokiteshvara Bodhisattva, while contemplating deeply the Prajnaparamita, realized the five aggregates are empty and was liberated from all suffering and hardship. We'll read through it once and then go back over it. Sariputra, form is not different from emptiness. Emptiness is not different from form. Form is emptiness. Emptiness is form. The same is true of feelings, perceptions, mental formations, and consciousness. Sariputra, all phenomena are empty. They do not arise or cease, are not defiled or pure, do not increase or decrease. Thus, in emptiness, there is no form, feeling, perception, mental formation, or consciousness. No eye, ear, nose, tongue, body, mind, or form, or body or mind. No form, sound, smell, taste, touch, or dharmas. No eye consciousness, and so on unto mind consciousness. No ignorance and extinction of ignorance, even on to no aging and death, and no extinction of aging and death. No suffering, cause of suffering, cessation, or path. No wisdom and no attainment. Because there is no attainment, bodhisattvas who rely on the Prajnaparamita have neither worry nor obstruction. Without worry and obstruction, there is no fear. Away from confusion and delusion, they will ultimately reach nirvana. All the Buddhas, the past, present, and future, rely on the Prajnaparamita to attain Anuttara Samyak Sambodhi. Thus know that the Prajnaparamita is the great profound mantra. It is the illuminating mantra. It is the most supreme of all mantras. It is the unequal mantra, able to eliminate all suffering. It is true and not false. Thus proclaim the Prajnaparamita mantra. Proclaim the mantra that says, Gate, Gate, Paragate, Parasamgate, Bodhisvaha. The end. All right, let's just go back over it briefly. Avalokiteshvara Bodhisattva. Which one's Avalokiteshvara? Does anyone know Avalokiteshvara? It's Guan Yin. And who's Guan Yin? You use the microphone. I have to. If I can do it, you can do it. So the people online can hear. Is Guan Yin, Avalokiteshvara is the Sanskrit name for the Bodhisattva Guan Yin, who's the one with 1,000 hands. And she has 1,000 hands to help people in 1,000 difficulties. So Avalokiteshvara, while contemplating deeply the Prajnaparamita, realized the five aggregates or skandhas are empty. What are the five skandhas? Alfred, do you know? Will, volition. Actually, the way they're translated here is form, feeling, perception, mental formations or thoughts, and consciousness. What is that a list of? Use the microphone. In particular, those are the constituents of the illusion of the self. The self doesn't exist, but there is an illusion of the self. What is the illusion of self made out of? Those are the ingredients of the illusion of the self. So what we take to be an independently existing self is really just a changing combination of form, feelings, perceptions, mental formations or thoughts, and consciousness. So Guanyin was contemplating the Prajnaparamita and realized the emptiness of the five skandhas or aggregates or piles or ingredients, and was liberated from all suffering and hardship. Sariputra, I don't know why he comes in here. He was one of the Buddha's disciples. He was famed for his Abhidharma analysis, his ability to break down the self into its component parts. That's what he was very good at. Sariputra, form is not different from emptiness. Emptiness is not different from form. Form is emptiness. Emptiness is form. The same is true of feelings, perceptions, mental formations, and consciousness. So form is not different from emptiness, and neither are any of the other five skandhas. That's what we've established so far. Sariputra, all phenomena are empty. And now we're going to give a list of the phenomena. It says, they do not arise or cease, are not defiled or pure, do not increase or decrease. This is frequently explained as the three seals, that arising and ceasing is, if things arise and cease, they're impermanent. If things are defiled or pure, suffering. Defiled things causes suffering and pure things don't. So the first seal is impermanence. The second seal is suffering. The third seal is nirvana. I don't understand how increase or decrease describe nirvana, but the commentaries tell us that these three things, perhaps these three things are the three seals. Then we get the five skandhas again. Thus, in emptiness, there is no form, feeling, perception, mental formation, or consciousness. Then it goes on. No eye, ear, nose, tongue, body, or mind. No form, sound, smell, taste, touch, or dharmas. No eye consciousness, and so on, unto mind consciousness. Does anyone recognize that last category we just described? It's usually called the 18 realms. You're nodding your head, Rebecca. But Jessica, sorry. The 18 realms, if the five skandhas are the ingredients of the self, the 18 realms are the ingredients of the world. So it's colors, sounds, feelings, or colors, sounds, textures, tastes, smells, and thoughts, ideas. Then you have the objective version, the color, but then on the inside you have sight. And when you put those together, you get 3 times 6 is 18. So that is a list of the 18 realms, which will be familiar to you if you read a lot of this stuff. No ignorance and extinction of ignorance, even unto. The even unto is kind of a ... No death and no extinction of aging and death. Does anyone recognize that? Yes. Raymond, can you hand him the microphone? He has to try again. You'll learn not to open your mouth.
I just read this. It is the interplay between causes, conditions, and effects, which basically means that all phenomena
Perfect. It's examination of cause and effect. It's usually listed as a 12-link chain. The first link is birth, the first link is ignorance, and the last link is old age and death. And there are 10 more links in between. But the idea is if the five skandhas are giving you kind of the ingredients of the illusion, the 12-link chain is giving you the steps of the illusion, the process of the illusion. And then it goes on to say, no suffering, cause of suffering, cessation or path. Those are the Four Noble Truths. So interestingly, what's going on here, it says, in emptiness, there is no five skandhas. There is no 3 seals. There is no 18 realms. There is no 12-link chain. There is no Four Noble Truths. It seems to be saying in emptiness, all phenomena are empty, even all the phenomena of Buddhism. The main truths of Buddhism reviewed here are all empty. There is no wisdom and no attainment, or alternately, you could translate that as there is nothing to know and nothing to attain. Because there is no attainment, bodhisattvas who rely on the Prajnaparamita, the wisdom that has gone beyond, have neither worry nor obstruction. Without worry and obstruction, there is no fear. Away from confusion and delusion, they will ultimately reach nirvana. All the Buddhas of past, present, and future rely on the Prajnaparamita to attain Anuttara Samyak Sambodhi. How many of you have seen that term before? Every Saturday at the English speaking service, Raymond says it's a long Sanskrit word that's usually translated something like perfect enlightenment. Sometimes they translate it and sometimes they leave it in the Sanskrit like this, depending on their preferences. And now the sutra concludes. Thus know that the Prajnaparamita is the great profound mantra, the illuminating mantra, the supreme of all mantras, the unequaled mantra, able to eliminate suffering. It's true and not false. Thus proclaim the Prajnaparamita, proclaim the mantra that says, and now we have some Sanskrit, Gate, Gate, Paragate, Parasamgati, Bodhisvaha. Again, I don't read Sanskrit, and apparently that's not actually correct Sanskrit, but it seems to say something like gone, gone, gone beyond, way gone, Bodhisvaha, hey, hello, or something like that. Anyway, so that's the Heart Sutra. It's very short, but there's a lot to think about. And I have a couple of questions in particular I want to ask you. The first question is, why does it say, in emptiness, there is no form, if it just said, emptiness is form? How can there be no form in emptiness if emptiness is form? Does that make sense? My question, at least. And the next question is, how can all Buddhas attain enlightenment if there is no attainment? So here, I'll put this back up here so that you can see it. It says here in the third paragraph, it says, in emptiness, there is no form. But in the second paragraph, it says, form just is emptiness. What do you think is going on there? So now we'll break you into groups and give you 10 or 15 minutes. Oh, wait, we have a question first.
Yeah. And do you happen to know why it is called the Heart Sutra? Is that a direct translation from Sanskrit? Did they literally say it is a Heart Sutra? And also, what is the meaning of a heart in that culture? What did it represent that it is called heart?
I think I'm not an expert on this. I think it's generally understood as the heart of the teaching, the core. And it is written that way both in Chinese and in Sanskrit. There is actually some debate about, most of these sutras are written in Sanskrit first and then translated into Chinese later. But the earliest versions we have of the Heart Sutra are in Chinese. So there's some belief that it might have been written in Chinese and then back translated into Sanskrit to make it look more authentic. So we don't, but in either case, it's heart in both Chinese and Sanskrit. I assume to mean kind of the core of the teaching. But so my question is, why does it say in emptiness there is no form if form is emptiness? So let's work on that in your groups for 15 minutes or so. Go ahead.
Like just to close the group?
Yeah.
Circle.
Because I just read this. So in example that I was reading, how do you explain to someone that a bucket is empty and the only reason you can get a bucket is because it is not full? But you need to understand the concept that what is full. So that was the first basic.
One thing I've learned from years of teaching is the closer you get to a circle, the better it does. So it's a weird magic phenomenon. No.
I mean, I understand it from my days as a Sufi because in Sufism, we meditated in a paradigm which I believe was set forth by an early writer. Anyway, no need to go into that. But in the meditation, the Sufi master had levels that we had to reach. And I can't remember, they're like 7 levels. Patanjali, I think, was the name of the man who set down this theory of meditation that the Sufis follow. And it's like level 4, as I remember it. But you go through these levels where you go deeper and deeper until you leave reality, you leave the physical world, and then you leave your mind and you come to what is, as I remember, was called the plane without forms. And I actually got to that level. That's as high as I got, but I got there. And it was very scary because when you jump off and leave your mind, there is no form. There is only emptiness. There is nothing. There are no images in the brain. There's nothing in the mind that you can hold on to. You're like standing on the abyss, and there's total emptiness in front of you. I will stop there because let's see, we have a large group. But the point I'm trying to make is I got to that place several times. In fact, I can go back to that place in my meditation. And there is nothing there. It's emptiness. But I think what this sutra is trying to say is that even there, we know that there's form to that emptiness. And you kind of think of it as the vast universe, that like you could leave this galaxy and you might think you've reached the end, but you haven't. That might not make any sense, but it's where I got to in my meditation, was to a place where there's nothing there in the mind. There's nothing there. All right, I zip my mind and my mouth.
Thanks, Al. That was awesome. I mean, if I can offer what I mean, I could relate to what you're saying, but I actually have only experienced that place through using plant medicine and being in a place, a realm of no form. So to me, I've never done it in without the use of plant medicine, but um being able to go beyond the illusion is how what I see. Form is just, I guess it was an illusion, and being able to break through that form where there's in the nothingness. It's like the nothingness and the everything. It's like God, I guess, like that's how my mind grasped it because I didn't have any language. This is really hard to also just put language on it, but being in the place where there's nothing, but like you said, like it's like this abyss where I guess all consciousness exists beyond form. So that's the only way I know how to articulate this. Kind of a hard concept for me, but I'll let you guys go next.
Okay, I'll go next. So I agree with Alfred. Yes, we do have many forms and we are stuck in illusion. So this is why certain things we can't let go. And the reason why the Heart Sutra was invented is because everybody have a core which starts within the heart. So whether we receive stuff, whether we want to manifest stuff, our energy comes from the heart. That's why we say gate, gate, par, sim gate. It represent kind of like what he was saying earlier, gone to the beyond. So as we level up, we'll start to notice that everything is just illusion. Actually, yeah, it's just everything is just illusion. And as you rise and rising up, it's just you'll start to notice that it's actually just nothing. I guess kind of like explain like that, like it's nothing, like because then you go beyond the cosmos and then you go beyond the universe or literally just stars or like nothing. So everything in our mind is just
illusion, and we had to find a way to escape that. And that's why we're stuck in certain realms. In order to pass certain realms, that's how you're able to explain or like feel it. Okay, yeah, that's all.
Do we have Tom?
Okay, thank you, Alfred. So this is really kind of cool. I teach, so I like getting people in group. I'm muting video mute because I'm a little unstable, the connection. But really like the idea of the Sufi, and it's awesome. And some people have said kind of compare all the religions to getting to, there's something that the Sufi have been saying that are very important. There was something I really liked with Sufi. I've never studied it much, but I liked that they said, may you do good things in this world and never know that you did them. So that's kind of like letting go of your attachment to your identity and what, who we think we may have helped, etc. So that idea of impermanence. And I think what I was getting out of it was that there's no permanent emptiness and no permanent form. I mean, we're accustomed saying, well, we understand that the form will end. And I was reading the Sutra of Mind Meditation. And so in that text, the Buddha said something like, emptiness can cure the sickness of the view of inherent existence. However, no medicine can cure the sickness of the view of emptiness. So if we think that everything is empty, if we think everything's inherently existent, I think we can all understand things change. But if the concern there seems that if you think everything doesn't matter, maybe, that everything's empty, that's not good. So I'm just thinking about the idea of impermanence, that neither form nor emptiness are permanent. Thanks. What do you all think?
What I like there. Well, first of all, I'd like to point out that later in the sutra, I mean, there was that key word of Buddhism, anuttara samyak sambuddhi. If there's a supreme and perfect enlightenment, which is what that means, then presumably one could realize an enlightenment that is perhaps not supreme or not perfect, one or the other or neither. And so that's sort of speaking maybe to the stages element that Tom and Alfred are referring to. That you could attain an enlightenment of the realization of emptiness, but then what does that get you? Because stuff exists. There is something of form. So maybe the next stage of enlightenment, the next sort of one is the realization of the emptiness of emptiness, right? To continue to move beyond just voidness. So I like that there's sort of an allusion to those stages there, and I believe Deborah was sort of getting towards that. Not to leave you out, Marissa. Sorry.
Yeah, it is not the end. And even in Sufism, when you get to that form, you're constantly reminded that you haven't found God, you haven't found nirvana, you're just at level 4, and there's 7 levels. So, it's up to the yogi to go on beyond level 4. However, there is this thing about you can't get across this emptiness until a guide comes and takes you across. And to me, that always brings it back to Buddhism, where they teach us we've got to have a boat. And the boat is only to carry us across the ocean of nescience to the other side, and then we let go of the boat. So that's like the guide that I'm always hunting for in level 4 is, please come, take me to the other side. Sorry to talk so much, guys.
Well, now that we've resolved one of the deepest philosophical issues of Buddhism and perhaps mysticism in general, shall we move on to the second great question?
What was it?
What I know, what was that? I didn't write it.
Remind us. What was the second question?
I'm gonna be honest, I did not take a note either.
Are there more people on this call other than Tom? I can't see how many people are on here.
There's the
is it
recording and then the staff, although I don't think they're actually here.
Okay, yeah, no, I saw that Tom was here, but I couldn't see that he was on the call. Okay.
So there's you, Marissa, myself, Andrew, Alfred, Deborah, and Tom.
Okay, got it. I apologize. I didn't get the second one because he went so fast on that slide. So I think I was stuck on the form is emptiness.
Well, I didn't even try. So good on you to get the first one. So.
Well, I'll talk some more since there's a lull. I really like the Heart Sutra. And I always felt when I was taking courses in Buddhism, when we read several different sutras, that it was the core teaching. And to me, you can't really understand emptiness until you understand impermanence. And when you realize that everything is impermanent, all forms are impermanent, all lives are impermanent, then you can understand that coming to the Heart Sutra is understanding that there's nothing real, nothing is going to last. So to me, that is where what the Buddha is saying in the Heart Sutra is that everything is empty. It's not real. Nothing's going to be here when you get to that point.
I'm sorry to cut you off. We have been informed what the second question is in the chat. It's how can all Buddha attain enlightenment if there is no attainment?
I think they just put in if there is no enlightenment.
No,
to correct that. They put a little star in line.
It is.
I think it's probably the same, but I think it's supposed to say, how can all Buddha attain enlightenment if there is no enlightenment? Yeah, she made a typo. Okay, yeah. So if there is no enlightenment.
I don't know what the typo was supposed to be, because I mean, the line is no attainment with nothing to attain. That's the line in the sutra.
Okay, I think it's the same. Okay.
Anyway, whatever.
Yeah. Do you have thoughts on that?
Me? I'm scared of all of these questions, because at best it's going to be a provisional answer, and at worst it's going to be just nakedly wrong and damn us all to ignorance and hell. I don't want that responsibility. It's so horrible. In theory, I mean, there's an idea of the attainment in the work being done being somewhat parabolized as cleaning the dust off of a mirror, that we possess this innate sort of Buddha nature, that nothing's being transformed so much as just cleansed to its original state. I find this to be philosophically very difficult, because if all things exist within the Buddha realm, which is something of the Avatamsaka, then how can that which is pure become impure? Impurity, the potential to be impure being itself an impurity. So I don't really find this to be philosophically compelling, but that just means that I'm ignorant, and I already knew that. So
I think this might be related to Tantra, which I think the tantric interpretation of the sutras was that since there is nothing to attain, you might have a really good time while you're here. So you get into alcohol, sex, and drugs to the max.
I like Al's thinking.
Well, I certainly not the general interpretation of the preceptees.
Deborah, do you have something to add?
I think it means that, like, I feel like it's because we're more focused on, like, kind of like, how do we figure it out? Like, kind of like saying, because we're in this multi-dimension, like, where it goes way beyond than we imagine. And we're so stuck on illusion, like how do we surpass this? How do we figure this out? To the point is not we're not realizing, like kind of like saying we need to like enjoy ourselves here. But then once when we pass those things, it's like I don't know how to say it. It's kind of like you need both. So it's kind of like saying you manifest something, but then you let go. You do this, but then you don't do that. So it's kind of like you have to find a balance of two in order to level up. And then as you level up, you'll start to see that we're all equal as one. And then when we start to realize like, oh, we're just equal, like you start to let go of things. And then soon we found that like whatever we're learning is not even true. Like, I don't know how to explain it. I think you just had to like meditate and go past through that realm in order to understand it. I just don't really know how to explain it.
Is sort of the summary, and maybe I've completely misinterpreted you, that's why I'm asking, is sort of the summary there that to focus on attainment too much means that when you've reached a certain point of so-called attainment, you would get stuck. You shouldn't focus on that level of attainment, because then it's making you proud. It's kind of blocking you. Is that you have to go, you attain something, but then you have to like kind of get over that and then keep going. Is
Yeah,
that what
exactly.
okay?
Yeah. And then you can pass like to another level and then you learn another lesson. It's kind of like what we were talking about last week, where you get like a vehicle and then you surpass those dimension and then you just keep learning and learning.
So does this make this provisional? Because if a Buddha attains Anuttara Samyak Sambodhi, the supreme and perfect enlightenment, then they're done. They have no further levels on which to progress at that point.
Correct.
So does the non-attainment mean that it's just for those of us who have not done it?
Yes, correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Spot on.
No, that makes sense. There are any number of provisional teachings. I'm very thankful for them.
Yeah.
Well, attainment always brings up in my mind material attainment in the world. And as I'm quite old, I see, looking back over my life and the lives of others, I live here in Hollywood, that, there are people who attain great material wealth, but there are also thousands of people on the street. And there is this natural tendency to think, oh, I made it and they didn't. But this Buddha's teaching is they made it also. At the point of death, everyone's exactly the same. And then nobody can take their material attainments with them. So it's kind of the same in the spiritual world. You may think you've attained great things, being a Sufi or a Buddhist, but in the end, what have you attained? Nothing. You've attained nothing. There is nothing.
I think that's why my head's having a hard time grasping it, because if there's no form, oh, we have to leave the break room. Oh, 50, okay. If there's no form, then who's attaining what?
Right.
That's why my mind just like there's no form, so who's attaining it? I just yeah. If yeah.
That's a good
Okay.
place to end.
All right, we have to leave, I guess now.
All right. See you guys in the other room.
Dr. Paul, you are on mute. You are mute. You are mute.
Room? Oh, how come I don't see them?
We're here. We see you, or at least I do.
All right.
However, we do not hear you. Not anymore. We lost you after the word all right. It does not show as muted either. It's just no sound.
We all went to Anatara Sanya Sambodhi, so there's
no sound.
Can you explain? Oh, there you are. Can you tell
There.
us? Can you tell us about what you talked about? Here, Marissa, you're new. I don't know you. Can you tell us about what they talked about in your group?
Oh my goodness. Okay. I'm the one in the group that's having a hard time grasping this concept. I mean, I don't know if I'm the good person, I'm the person to grasp this because are you, do you want me to answer the first question or the second question?
Well, you're exactly the person to answer it for. Why don't you start with the first one and see what you thought the group was talking about, and if people want to fill it in, they can do that.
Okay, so in emptiness there is no form. If emptiness is form, okay, so how's that possible? I mean, I like what Alfred had to say, kind of like, I think it's kind of like when you sort of start reaching these levels and where you become nothing or no one, and it just kind of like this abyss. That's the one thing that I'm like grasping onto from this conversation. Sort of like once you get to this place of enlightenment, I guess you can say, there is nothing. It's sort of this abyss of nothingness. And Alfred was saying he had experienced that where there was no more form. So how is that possible? I think you sort of get beyond the illusion of the self, and so the illusion starts disappearing, I guess, as you start reaching that enlightenment. That's kind of how I digested it. And then the all Buddhas attain. So how can all Buddhas attain enlightenment if there is no attainment? This is really hard for me, my mind to comprehend, because if there is nothing to attain, yeah, I think we were kind of all over, all of us had different things to say on this one. Like if you reach this place where there's nothing it's like, who's doing the attaining if there is no form? So if there is no form, then who's the one who is attaining this enlightenment? I don't know. I'm having a really hard time kind of digesting this. So I don't know if anyone else wants to help out.
Does anyone? Come over here so they can see you. Yes, you did that.
Well, our discussions were kind of all over the map. And so we had a lot of different ideas, but just to attack the second one, because it seems a little easier. I think we're thinking along the lines, or at least one of the ideas was that if we take into consideration the idea that we have an intrinsic Buddha nature per se, and that Buddha nature is a wise nature, that so in some sense we already have that core enlightenment, and that the challenge is to kind of eliminate the obstacles to recognizing that inherent wisdom, and kind of deprogramming ourselves or deconditioning ourselves to whatever false concepts we have about self in the world, to bring us closer to that realization that we are wise and partake in that overall wisdom that the universe is. I mean, that's a little editorial there, but that's about all.
You said something in your group. You said something about you thought that the sutra was trying to break us of certain intellectual habits.
Right. Where it was Shariputra is being told that there's no consciousness, no dharmas, no nothing, that all these elements are very key factors in how we deal with the world on a day-to-day basis. Elements of faith and practical matters like sensory input, how reliable is that? And so if all this has been called false, I thought that perhaps maybe that the intent was just to shake us of these certainties that we think are so true, and to maybe perhaps make us more susceptible to some other kind of understanding that isn't so either or dualistic in nature.
Thank you. Someone else from online, does that fit in well with your discussions? Deborah or Andrew?
I think he got it spot on. We're here, most likely, what we thought is true, like how we're stuck in illusion, but to find out it's actually not true. And yeah, so I think it's spot on.
One interesting question is there are a lot of different ways that we use language, and linguists distinguished between descriptive use of language and what they sometimes call therapeutic use of language. So description use of language, you're trying to describe some state of affairs. This is the way it is. There are 2 tomatoes in the refrigerator, or the weather tomorrow will be sunny. So you're trying to describe a fact. But sometimes you can be using language to do something other than describe a fact. Say you're telling a joke, right? The purpose of telling a joke isn't to communicate to someone some fact about the world. You're trying to get them to laugh. You're trying to change their state of mind in some sense, but not necessarily communicate truths about the world. Or similarly, a lullaby, or a nighttime story. You know, the goal of a lullaby isn't to inform people about the world. The goal of a lullaby is to put them to sleep. And I sometimes wonder if the Heart Sutra is kind of like a lullaby, but in a sense, the opposite of a lullaby. It's not trying to put you to sleep, it's trying to wake you up. But the point is to have this effect on you, not necessarily to describe some fact about the world. That's just one way of making sense of what seemed to me to be a lot of very difficult questions. The other thing we talked about in the beginning in our group was to think about the enlightenment that Guan Yin has at the very beginning of the Heart Sutra, when she's practicing the wisdom that has gone beyond and sees that the 5 skandhas are all empty. And then it goes on to explain they're all empty, but emptiness is no different from form, and form is no different from emptiness. What does that tell us about Guan Yin's? What was Guan Yin's insight? What was Guan Yin's enlightenment? Why was it important to see that form is not different from emptiness? Again, in this group, our new member, Jessica, was describing the possibility, if you think that form and emptiness are different, you can become, people are frequently caught up in form, but you can also be caught up and sort of obsessed with emptiness. Which raises an interesting question, because an example of someone who's obsessed with emptiness might be an arhat, the emptiness of the self and the emptiness of all phenomena. But the bodhisattva, in order to help others, has to live in the world of phenomena and has to see the world as empty, but also be able to interact with the form. So that's another way of thinking of what might be going on in the sutra, understanding this new idea of the bodhisattva. And unfortunately, I'm going to have to leave you with that, because even though it's a very, very short sutra, it raises an infinite number of questions. For years, I was trying to understand this sutra, and everyone I asked, they kept telling me I had to read one of the longer ones. And I kept reading the longer ones, and they were just as bad, but they were longer and longer and longer. And that was no help at all. So it was the same questions, just magnified 100 times. But underneath it all is this question of emptiness. And we're going to be looking at that for the next couple of times. Emptiness in its relationship to form. And one of the great, after the Prajnaparamita Sutras were written, one of the great philosophers of the Chinese tradition came along, Nagarjuna, who wrote verses explaining emptiness. The next time we're going to look at some Nagarjuna. And actually, we're not just going to look at Nagarjuna because he's very difficult to understand, but look at Jay Garfield's explanation of Nagarjuna because he has a very helpful explanation. And this is what we're going to talk about next time. The passage from Nagarjuna says, neither from itself, nor from another, nor from both, nor without a cause, does anything whatever arise. That's his explanation of emptiness. And Garfield explains, when Nagarjuna says of a table that it is empty, that statement invites the question, empty of what? And the answer is, empty of inherent existence or self-nature, or in the more Western sense, essence. Now, to say that the table is empty is hence simply to say that it lacks essence, and importantly, not to say that it is completely non-existent. To say that it lacks essence, Nagarjuna will explain, is to say, as the Tibetans like to put it, that it does not exist from its own side, that its existence as the object that it is, as a table, depends not just on it, but depends also on us as well. That is, if our culture had not evolved this manner of furniture, then what appears to us to be an obviously single object, a table, might instead be correctly described as 5 objects, 4 sticks with a board on top. Apart from these, there is no table. From the Nagarjuna standpoint, when we ask if something does it exist, we must always pay careful attention to the sense of the word exist that is at work. We might mean exist inherently, that is, in virtue of having an essence. Or we might mean to exist conventionally, that is, to exist dependently, to be the meaning of a word, but not to have any other existence of its own. No phenomenon, Nagarjuna will argue, exists in the first sense, essentially. But that does not entail that all phenomena are completely non-existent. Rather, to the degree that anything exists, it exists in the latter sense, that is, conventionally. Now, that's a mouthful. We're going to talk about that next week. If you want to look at the paragraph ahead of time, it'll be on the PowerPoint slides, but you don't have to. We'll just talk about it next week. And I'll look forward to seeing you then. Thank you very much, and thank you for our new arrivals. Oh, yes. And that's good. We still have a few minutes. We have, thank you for reminding me. The last 2 classes are open for students to take over and raise subjects of their own interest. Who, Cassandra, are you interested? You have to grab the microphone. So tell us what you're thinking about to help inspire some of the other students.
I think I just got to the yes. I don't know. I don't know. I need assistance in that or examples of previous topics.
Okay, we can do that. And if anybody wants to talk with me about it, either in person after class or on Zoom, we can do that. Also, when you are having a discussion, you don't have to give a lecture. All you have to do is ask some questions and split everyone into groups like I do. But if you want to create a little PowerPoint or something, we can do that. Does anyone online think they might be interested in help in having a bit of class time?
Being an egomaniac, I would be delighted. But I would need to share my screen.
We can do that.
Okay.
Oh, can we do that too? We can set it so anybody can share their screen, can't we? Yes, we can do that.
Anyway, yeah, but the thing I have in mind is just something that I experienced in China with Buddhism. It's definitely about Buddhism, but it's just some real experience that I had, which brought me into the heart of emptiness.
That would be great. You can just tell a little story and break people up to talk about it. How about Andrew or Deborah or Tom or even Marissa? Would anybody like to run a little class for a while?
In our breakout, I expressed my great fear of all of these, in that being horribly unenlightened, I risk making the situation so much worse. Why should somebody listen to a being who doesn't know the answer to any question? I don't even know what the questions are. I'm not looking at the finger. I don't know what moon it's pointing at. I don't know.
That's what group discussions are for.
It's true. We can just talk about that. We can talk about how we don't know what we don't know.
That actually, I think that would be fascinating if you wanted to lead the discussion of group discussions. I could hear from your point of view how you liked the different ways of organizing the course. Well, we still have time for if people decide they want to join the list. You can volunteer next time, and otherwise, I'll see you next week to talk about nothingness. Bye bye.